Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third season of My Favourite Game. It was a year ago this week, in fact a year ago tomorrow as if this episode's going out, that My Favourite Game began. 10 people from the UK games industry coming on to talk about their favourite games, be it personalities, writers, journalists, etc. Coming on to talk about the likes of Grim Fandango, Metal Gear Solid 2, Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 9, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Streets of Rage 2, and many, many more. Season 2 upped the ante a little bit by adding developers for the first time, with 10 other folks coming on to talk about their favourite game, such as Metal Gear Solid 3, the original Metal Gear Solid, Half-Life, Robotron 2084, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and many, many more. Season 3 keeps that concept, with journalists, writers, developers, a mix of all three coming on to talk about their favourite game this season. It's been a year since My Favourite Game began, and what started out as a small vanity project has grown into a massively big undertaking, to the point that it's become so successful that by this time next week, when episode 2 drops, I'll be at the Games Media Awards representing My Favourite Game, which is up for Best Independent Podcast. Can you believe it? After just a year, and after what started out as such a small project, My Favourite Game is up for an award. A big one at that. It's amazing. But enough about that. We're not here to talk about awards. We're here to talk about games and the experiences that games have given us that shaped our lives. So let's kick off My Favourite Game Season 3, shall we? And let's kick it off with games writer Jordan Erica Weber, which only leads to one question. Jordan Erica Weber, what is your favourite game?
My favourite game is The Sims 2. My earliest memories are playing video games, which I'm sure is something that everybody says. But I know it's true because I remember playing games consoles that came out before I was born. I think, anyway. So I remember playing on like a Game Gear, which is a super old console that I definitely won't have owned myself. And yeah, for some reason, despite claiming to hate video games herself, my mother seemed really, really supportive of my hobby, well, of all of ours, really. So I'm the eldest of 8 children. So there's always been younger kids around, which I guess makes it more reasonable that we would have so many games consoles. So yeah, I had a Game Boy, I had a Nintendo 64, we had a PlayStation 1 as a family. We used to watch each other play Spyro. Yeah, and we always had PCs. I started playing games on PC, I'm pretty sure, because I learned to read and stuff when I was like 2. And I used to play these stupid math games on like DOS. And I'm 25, so I'm not sure when DOS was around, but I must have been pretty young, I think. I used to play this one. I think it was like a wizard in a castle and you had to solve math problems and there was cake maybe, but this is really scraping my early memories and my memory's pretty bad, so I'm not sure if I'm remembering that accurately at all. But yeah, basically we just had every games console that's come out since I was born we've owned. Pretty much.
like what do you think were the kind of first games you were playing at that time? Like obviously you mentioned playing Spyro as a family, but like what else were you playing back then as you started out?
Let me think. I used to have a Game Boy, an original Game Boy, I know that, and they came out pretty close to when I was born, I think. When did the original Game Boy come out?
Oh, you're talking 1992, 3 maybe?
So I was born in 1990. It says it came out in Europe in 1990.
So 2-3 years off.
So yeah, I had an original Game Boy. I used to take it in the car on long car journeys. I used to play Tetris, obviously. I had Super Mario. Gosh, what else did I have? I had Kirby's Pinball I used to really like, and
Ooh.
Kirby's Dream Land. What else did I have? Later on, I had the Pokemon trading card game. I really liked that. And obviously, all of the Pokemon games I used to play. Me and my brothers and sisters used to make sure we got all of the different colors so that we could trade. We did, as we got older, we used to get more kind of systematic about it. Like me and my brother would spend a whole day starting a new game on whichever Pokemon we were playing, getting the starter Pokemon. So I'd get one and he'd get another one. And then we'd trade back and forth, so that one of us had both of them. And then the other one would start again and with another starter Pokemon. And we'd spend hours just doing this so that we could both start with all of the starter Pokemon.
Mm.
And that is what me and my brothers and sisters used to do when we were growing up.
Just tons of Pokemon, as it was for
Yeah.
any other kid in the UK at that time, more or less. Around the time
Sure.
of Boom, basically.
I guess like I don't know, we lived always in like kind of farmhouses and stuff, so kind of far away from other kids. But because there were so many of us, we always had loads of other people to play with. And obviously, we spent time outdoors and everything, like building tree houses and playing in the garden and stuff. But yeah, most of our time I think was spent playing video games. And it's not a bad thing. We could have it either have been that or TV, I reckon. But for us, it was games, and it's still to this day, my younger brothers and sisters, it's one of the only things they'll do together. Like cooperatively without fighting about it. Like it's something we can all enjoy, which is really nice.
Like what games do they play? Like
Oh, Minecraft.
Of course, Minecraft.
Yeah, it's cute. Like when I go visit, we'll play Pocket Edition, and we'll have like 4 or 5 of us on different devices, all playing in the same world, building a big mansion that one of my brothers will then burn down by accident because it's cooperative.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, like Minecraft seems to like be inspiring a whole new generation of young gamers anyways. Like wherever you go, whatever their interest is, it's fascinating to see anyways.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm.
People keep asking me about it because I do all this family gamer stuff. I have parents going, so what do you think about Minecraft? Because they kind of don't really seem to know what to make of it. And I get that. Like the first time I experienced it, it was I was at university and there were some people playing it in the chaplaincy, and I was like, what is this? This looks nothing like the games I play. You guys, you need to see some actual video games. Come on, this is pathetic.
Ridiculous, even.
It was, I don't know, I just remember looking at it and being like, how can you even understand what's going on that screen? It's so pixelated and so blocky. And I think I tried the beta and I just couldn't, because it didn't tell you what to do. I was completely hopeless because I don't have very much patience when it comes to video games these days. So I just kind of dismissed it. But then when my brothers and sisters started playing it and they showed me how to play on the Pocket Edition, I really, really enjoyed it.
Like to be fair, I can't get into Minecraft myself. It's not for a lack of trying. It's just like you say, I don't have the patience for it as well. So but I can definitely respect what it's done, and fair credit to Mojang for what it's done, and Notch, of course. So with that in mind, like, how did you first start getting into the industry side of things? Obviously, you mentioned the family gamer stuff, but like, how did you first start out?
So I've always wanted to be a writer. I used to write stories and stuff way back when I was really, really young. Like I said, I learned to read and stuff pretty young, and I was kind of bored at school and things, so I used to write stories and stuff to myself. And yeah, I didn't really know how I was going to make that into my career, because the patience thing, I don't have the patience to write a book. I tried fiction. I did National Novel Writing Month when I was like 16, and it turned out pretty terribly, so I gave up because I guess that's me. I tried it once and it was bad, so I stopped. But I think I went to like a careers person at uni, and was like, I really want to write. And she tried to get me to do marketing. And I was like, oh, no, that sounds awful. I think I want to do journalism. And then she did the whole, oh, journalism is really hard. It's really competitive. And I was like, well, I'm awesome. It'll be fine. I'm special. I can do something that's hard. And I went to a different careers person because that one was bumming me out. And this different one said that if I wanted to do journalism, either I could take a journalism course, which would cost money and get a qualification and apply for a job, or I could get a part-time job and do freelancing to kind of build up experience and maybe then apply for a staff writer position. So that's what I did. My boyfriend at the time was doing a PhD. So I kind of lived with him while he was finishing that, and I got a part-time job in Game Station actually at the time, and started writing for some blogs that a friend of mine was helping to run from uni. And then Game Station went bust, and I lost my job. But fortunately, it coincided with I think almost the exact day that my first paid article went up. So then I just kind of started doing that all the time, working on it constantly, not making very much money, doing things on the side like making websites and doing lots of transcription and babysitting and stuff like that. And just kind of built up experience from there, really. I was games editor of my student newspaper as well. So I guess that gave me a little bit of experience. And I wrote for free for a website, which I know you're not supposed to do, but they did give me feedback, which some editors now don't, even when they pay me. So that was nice.
Game Station went bust around 3 years ago. So you started what 3 years ago professionally. So
yeah. April the 2nd, 2012 was when my first published article went up.
Can you remember where?
Oh, it was on some blog that my friend from uni, who did, I think, go into the marketing side of things, she was helping to run this network of blogs. It's not very exciting, I'm afraid. If you want, my first exciting thing, I guess, was I got published in The Guardian, as in the actual paper. Sometimes the online stuff is also in a physical version of a website. They call it a newspaper. It's made of trees. Have you heard of this?
I don't think I heard. I don't think I have even. No.
So that the Guardian website also has this dead tree version, and I'd wanted to get in there. I used to think to myself as a kid, if I got in a newspaper, that'd be it. I'd be made. So I did that a few months. I did that in September of 2012. I wrote about a local thing that was happening in Leamington, pitched it to the society section, and just kind of lucked out, I think. She edited it a bunch. I didn't have much experience at the time. The resultant article was basically unrecognizable from the copy that I sent her, but, had my name on it. So
it was fair game, basically.
Yeah, I was pretty happy about that. I kind of was just like, what do I do now? I fulfilled my goal.
Just kind of pondering what's next.
Yeah.
Let's move on to your favourite game, The Sims 2, and we find ourselves on a bit of a pickle here because I said this to Jordan before we started out. I have not played The Sims at all on PC, and I have not played the series on console in God knows how long has it been since. Well, Sims 3 came out in 2011 in the last gen, so I think it was around 10, 11 the last time I played it. And even then, it's a series that is constantly evolving with each mainline installment. So, I have questions specifically for The Sims 2, but bear in mind, to anyone listening, this could also apply to the rest of the series as well, so worth bearing that in mind for those listening.
Yeah, Johnny wouldn't let me pick the whole of The Sims as my favourite game.
I always force people to pick one game, and I'm goddamn sticking to it. So beware anyone who comes on. Was The Sims 2 your first experience with the series, or had you played The Sims 1 already?
Oh no, Johnny. I'm old
Oh,
school. I'm a
okay.
hardcore Sims fan. I've
Uh,
been there since the beginning.
okay. I've been schooled here, so yeah, I'm stepping aside now.
It was difficult to decide which one should be my favorite because I've played all of them, and I kind of consider it, like I said to you earlier, Johnny, I kind of consider it to be one game that just gets kind of big updates every few years. Um, I don't know, because I've been playing it constantly, it's really difficult to separate them out in my mind. It kind of just feels like this big evolving thing. Because they don't, it's not like there's a new story each time. It's just kind of working the formula, kind of modernizing it and stuff, which feels more like an update than a sequel. But yeah, I played, I think I got the first one as a Christmas present, maybe, the year it came out. And it was unlike anything else I'd played. Up until that point, I mostly played like adventure games on PC. My friend and I used to play King's Quest and stuff a lot, like which I think was older than we were, but I think maybe she had like her dad's copies of the game or something. And I played like Discworld and Simon the Sorcerer and stuff. And then yeah, I got The Sims and I was like, wow, this is a whole new kind of game. In fact, and this is the first time I've told anyone this, Johnny, but I actually invented The Sims before. No, you joke. You laugh, but I actually did. When I can distinctly remember being a child and writing the design documents for a game in which you would do real life stuff. And people I told about it, like I think my sister was like, why would you want to play a game where you like went to the shops and got a job? That sounds awful. No one would ever play that. So yeah, I totally invented The Sims before Will Wright did.
Well, why haven't you sued him? Jesus, you should be rich by now.
I mean, fortunately, I'm not motivated by money. If I were, I don't think I'd be in the career that I'm in.
Good point. Good point.
Like, what was the kind of experience like for you back then playing it? Like talk at length about that kind of wow experience of playing The Sims 1 for the first time.
I'm finding it really difficult to remember because I was like 10, I think, when it came out. But I do remember that it completely absorbed me. I was obsessed. I think at that stage we only had one PC in the house, and I think it was in the sitting room. So I I spent a lot of time with my family, but not really with my family, if you get what I mean. Like sitting in the corner of the room playing Sims. My sister and I used to kind of talk about it even when we weren't playing it. I remember when we found out the cheats, we thought that was super cool for a while. And then we decided, as we got better at the game, that we weren't going to use cheats because that was for losers. And we were only going to play kind of pure no cheats. We weren't going to build mansions anymore.
It's an interesting way to look at it because like The Sims is built around the stories you kind of create in that. Like I said, it's any story you can dream up. It's doable.
Yeah, no, so the thing about The Sims and the marketing guys behind the game have kind of got a hold of this and started using it themselves, but it came from the game itself. The different kinds of players, so they call them simmers, which makes me think of slimmers and like Weight Watchers, but it basically means person who plays The Sims. And they come in different categories almost. So like I was telling a friend of mine the other day that when I play The Sims, I don't build houses because I can't be bothered. I just move my Sims into the ones that are already there. And they were like, no, building the houses is the best bit. Like there are some people who spend hours and hours building a house and then they'll move someone in and get bored of that bit of the game because all they want to do is build the houses. And then there are some people who spend ages and ages trying to make Sims that look like them, like recreating themselves in the game so that they can, I don't know, live out some weird fantasy where they're dating everyone in One Direction or something. I just like the kind of systems and the storytelling side of it, and the actual playing is the bit that I like. I don't even use custom content or anything. I'm really boring. I play the game kind of strictly as it's meant to be played. But I really, really like it.
So like, what? Like, obviously, you probably get into the expansion side of stuff. The expansion. The expansion. Shut up, Colin. The expansion side of.
Oh yeah, Johnny. I mean, so this is why I landed on The Sims 2. For The Sims 1 and The Sims 2, I owned every single expansion for those games, which is quite a lot of shelf space actually. Like there are quite a few, all of the expansions and all of the stuff packs. By the time I think like a few years into The Sims 3, I just kind of stopped. I think because I became an adult and had to spend my own money on them, and then kind of stopped being able to justify spending hundreds of pounds over the lifetime of the game on basically tat,
Uh,
if you want to be honest about it. But yeah, for The Sims 2, I had all of them.
just so basically just stop feeding the addiction, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, with Sims 4, they're all digital, I think, now anyway, so it kind of doesn't have the same. I used to feel like a collector, you know. I was like, oh, one day I'll show my grandchildren my collection of The Sims and all those expansions, and they'll be like, Grandma, what is wrong with you? Um, but you know, I'd have something cool on my shelves. I used to have the strategy guides and stuff as well, but I gave them to my brother the other year.
So this is something that obviously you wouldn't have been able to answer at the time, but like looking back on hindsight, like obviously the first Sims, like went on to become like one of the most influential games of all time because
Mm.
of its core concept. So like talk about in hindsight again, like the weight on the shoulders of The Sims 2, like following The Sims 1's release and its success, and on obviously with Will Wright's non-involvement now with him going off to do sport at the time.
I think that it's gotten more difficult since then. I think they had a relatively easy job making The Sims 2 compared to The Sims. I think if you look back, The Sims 2 had the biggest sales figures, and then it kind of went down from that point. But The Sims was so big that they couldn't really help but be successful with a sequel. And they had the most opportunity to make changes that were obvious as well. Like if you look at the gap between The Sims 3 and The Sims 4, people just see they don't see the interesting mechanical changes. They just see the things that have been taken away. And kind of the same with The Sims 2 to The Sims 3. But when they were going from their original almost draft game in The Sims 2, where they were just like, this is an interesting idea, let's see how it goes, to the kind of perfection that is The Sims 2, I think they had a lot to work with. The biggest change, I mean, there was the graphics. Obviously, they made it all 3D in a way that it wasn't in The Sims 1. It was kind of isometric.
It was more or less. I don't know if this is perhaps the right term for it, but it was more of a Sims 1 animus, at least on PlayStation 2, because that was the version I was playing at the time. It was more 2.5D, something like that there.
What, the Sims 2?
Sims 1.
Sims 1, yeah. So the Sims 1, it was like an isometric perspective. So you had, I think, 4 fixed camera angles that you could rotate round to, and that was it. But you were always looking down at the house, if I remember rightly, from the same kind of angle. But in The Sims 2, it was a lot more free. The camera could move around a lot more, and you could zoom in and out, and more than like I think you had 3 levels of zoom in the first one, and most people just stuck to 1. But in The Sims 2, you can kind of zoom in more and move the camera around more, and there's the graphics are just generally better, the animations are better and stuff like that. But the biggest change for me, the thing I found most interesting, was that your Sims aged. Because in The Sims 1, you could make babies, which is something I've always been fascinated in doing in The Sims. But they just a mummy sim and a daddy sim would have a kiss, and then a baby would appear, as in real life. And then after a while, it would.
If only it was that simple.
I mean, no, I'm glad, to be frank, that it's not that simple. Right, I'd probably be a mother of quite a large brood by this stage. But the babies in the kind of little bassinets or whatever they're called, they would, after a few days, turn into a child just by magic, and then they would stay a child for the rest of time, and they wouldn't age any further, and the adults wouldn't age. They could die, obviously. People have been killing their Sims since time immemorial, but they couldn't die of old age. But in The Sims 2, there were all of these age stages. I mean, I remember looking it up on the internet. And gosh, when did The Sims 2 come out?
It was
This must have
2004, wasn't it?
2004. So I guess the internet had been around for a while then. But I remember looking it up and being absolutely obsessed with looking for every single detail about this aging process because I thought it was fascinating. And the genetics as well. So if you had two Sims make a baby, the baby would look like a mix of their looks. And you could do all kinds of funny experiments. And this is where I'm struggling to remember if it was in The Sims 2 or The Sims 3 that I did this, but I did this experiment where no, it must have been The Sims 3 I did this. Would you like to hear this story anyway?
Go on. I'll allow it.
So the genetics thing in The Sims has always fascinated me, and in The Sims 3 I did this experiment where I made a male Sim with green skin and a very high libido, and I got him to sleep with or to have unprotected woohoo with as many women as I possibly could, so that he could impregnate them, so that I could test the genetic system to see how many of the babies would come out with his green skin. And it was roughly 50-50. I think he had a 50 or something children by the time I was bored with him, and half of them had green skin and half of them didn't.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why I like The Sims. It's stuff like that. I really, really love games that try to simulate real life or something I love the way that games abstract things like that in order to simulate them, and the ways that they do that, and the ways that you can play with those systems to make interesting things happen. That's what I like. And obviously The Sims is all about that.
The Sims has, I think, perhaps more than any other, at least certainly for the first three games. I wouldn't know about the fourth one because I've not played the fourth one, and I've perhaps seen enough marketing stuff of The Sims 4 to last me a lifetime anyways to know what that game is going to be like. But Sims 2, it certainly seems like it has, at least for me, at least from playing it, like a lot more than Sims 3 at least, and perhaps equally on par with Sims 1. Like, it had a lot more personality and creativity to it.
People are really keen to kind of simplify that and to be able to explain why Sims 2 was more popular in kind of one sentence. And they often talk about the personality and stuff. The Sims 2 aesthetically was kind of more cartoonish. I think with The Sims 3, they were trying to go more towards realism, which I appreciated, but a lot of people didn't. But then I'm biased. I just love them all. I play The Sims 4, even though I know that the generally accepted opinion is that you should stick with The Sims 3 or even The Sims 2. But yeah, The Sims 2 was more cartoony. And I honestly think it sold more because The Sims 1 was really, really popular, and then The Sims 2 kind of perfected it and changed enough that it was kind of this amazing new thing. And by the time it got to The Sims 3, people were just like, yeah, well, what else is new? How are you going to impress us this time? And they've just run out of things to do. I mean, The Sims 3's biggest change was that the world was open and you could move between lots without loading screens. And the kind of the neighborhoods felt more alive, which is why my green-skinned man could go and impregnate so many women, because the NPCs kind of got on with their lives as well. Whereas in The Sims 2, they were more separated out, distinct lots like they were in The Sims 1. But then, and you know, when you come to The Sims 4, they've got this really cool new emotion system that I really, really enjoy and appreciate from a mechanical aspect, but it does remove the moving between lots with no loading screens, and it removes a bunch of the stuff that was added in the expansions, and sometimes that's all people can focus on, because when a big change is something mechanical like that, it's really easy to not appreciate it.
This is maybe a bit of a lost memory, but like I don't recall The Sims 1 having a kind of storyline. I think like there was a free mode, or at least on PlayStation 2, and it was like there was a free mode, and there was more of a career mode wherein you lived your life day to day, yada yada yada, and then you went and did your job basically like everyday real life. But I digress. But like Sims 2 had a story mode, like in that it was like based on the supernatural essentially.
That must have been the console version.
Might have been.
The PC version, it's never had a story mode, as you might call it. there's never been kind of like a campaign in The Sims at all. I mean, they've all had kind of pre-built families and stuff that have really, really kind of vague descriptions and things that people have built stories around, but there's no explicit goals that you have to take on, no levels or anything like that. It's just completely open. I mean, in the Sims 4, it's gotten a bit more RPG-like almost in that not an overall structure, but when you've made your sim and you've put them in their house or whatever, when you do things like when you choose a job, in order to get to the next stage of their job, you might have to fulfill certain criteria or carry out certain tasks in order to kind of level up to the next level of your career, which I guess feels kind of RPG-like. You know, you build your skills and stuff. But you get to pick what job they do and you get to make that sim. So there's no kind of campaign mode really in any of them.
Ah, okay.
I think that's just the console ones.
Yeah, and now that I've been thinking about it, probably is the console version, especially considering there was The Sims busting out, and that was more or less a story-driven game.
I think I played a bit of one of the. I think I played Herbs maybe, or maybe Busting Out, and I just thought it was really, really ridiculous.
Busting Out was fine. Busting Out was fine, but the herbs. Ugh. The less we talk about the herbs, the better.
Okay.
That's or maybe we'll come back to that. But after that, it should be buried deep in dirt in the ground. But like the console versions, I do particularly remember having the feature to directly control characters in the game as well, rather compared to click here to bring the character here. So like say click on the fridge, bring the character to the fridge, eat something, yada yada yada. I could actually control that character and bring that person to the fridge. At least certainly on the console version, anyway. So it was more like Sims 1 was more traditional on console, anyways, in that you had to click A to bring character here, so to speak. But like Sims 2, it was more of a direct approach to it. I can't remember if you could still do the traditional approach. I'm pretty sure you could. Otherwise, then there wouldn't be of much point in it.
So you could control the character directly, like as in walk them around?
Yeah.
Ah, you can't do that in any of the PC ones.
Ah.
You're never really playing as the character. You're always kind of playing as God or yourself or however you want to see it.
Ah.
Your Sims, I mean, more and more as the series moves on, more and more your Sims are kind of autonomous and will do things themselves. Especially in The Sims 4, they'll spend all their time playing video games and drinking if you don't tell them what to do.
Oh dear. Oh well, it's certainly advanced far enough to do that, anyways. Because I remember playing The Sims 1 on PS2 and just thinking, if I don't have enough tasks for them stacked up, like go to the fridge, go to the toilet, have a shower, watch TV, or do whatnot. Like they just stand there going idle, like with goldfish kind of stare going blank.
Yeah, they'll
blank,
stand
blank.
there going, I'm hungry, and not do anything about it.
So it's certainly advanced far enough to have that kind of have them be so autonomous. Like how far? Okay, maybe not how far out. That's probably the wrong way of wording it. But how was that system kind of played at the time with Sims 2, anyways? At least like it was obviously. I'd like to think it was a lot more improved than just goldfish staring out the window kind of stare with nothing to do.
The autonomy.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, in general, it's just improved from game to game. But I'm pretty sure in The Sims 2, I think they had an option. And this is where, I mean, I don't know how many rabid Sims fans are going to listen to this, but you'll get emails if I get this wrong. But I think that The Sims 2 introduced an option in the options menu where you could adjust the level of autonomy that they had. So you could make them into dolls that just stood there unless they were given something to do, or you could make them pretty autonomous and then they would at least do things like go to the toilet and not just wet themselves because you hadn't told them to go to the toilet.
Like we've already gone over the kind of aging, producing offspring and the concept of dying in the game, like unless there's anything more you want to add to that.
Only that was the thing that got me excited about The Sims 2. I think I remember seeing like some kind of promotional image for the game on a website that was just, I think maybe it was the same sim as a baby, and then as a toddler, and then as a child, a teen, an adult, and then as an elder, and then maybe a gravestone at the end, or like an urn or something. And I thought, wow, that's cool. I really can't wait. I think maybe The Sims 2 was the first game that I looked forward to before it had come out, because I mean, unlike I'm sure a lot of my colleagues, I didn't read gaming magazines, and I didn't really pay much attention to what was coming out. I just kind of played the games I had and was content with that. Probably because we had so many, I was pretty spoiled. But for The Sims 2, I was excited about it for months before it came out. Maybe that's where I started to learn patience, because I had to wait.
Ah, like every other person waiting for perhaps their most anticipated game.
Yeah, I greedily kind of lapped up all of the information that there was and went over and over it in case I'd missed anything, and just to remind myself of how cool it was going to be when it eventually came out.
That was more or less me with Metal Gear Solid 4. Like, God
Mm.
knows how long ago was Metal Gear? 7 years ago. So yeah, that was perhaps my most anticipated game ever. So I definitely know that feeling. The wait and the patience. It's just, it drives you mad.
Yeah, I think I think The Sims 2 came at a formative time for me. Like, that's another reason why I picked that one instead of any of the other numbers. Because, so if it came out in 2004, if that's what you're saying, then I would have been 14. And that was kind of, that's a formative age for anyone, really. And I had a particularly kind of difficult time of things when I was growing up. And I think I like, for a while, I didn't consider myself to be playing video games. I skipped a console generation almost entirely. Personally, I didn't have a GameCube or an Xbox or a PlayStation 2. My family had them, but I wasn't really interested in playing them. I just spent a lot of time on the internet and, talking to people on MSN and stuff like that, and playing The Sims, though. That was the only game I was playing at that time. I used to tell myself when I was a teenager that I would stop playing video games when I became an adult, like that I would just give it up, as if it was this bad habit that I had because I was a teenager, and that I was going to stop when I became mature. Obviously, I didn't.
You can stop at any time now, Jordan. You can stop at any time. So you mentioned your story earlier about the Green Man impregnating everyone, or trying to impregnate everyone in The Sims
yeah.
3. What a story! What a story! Have you got any other stories? I'm more than happy to have them be around the series, but extra credit for Sims 2.
Brownie points. The thing about The Sims 2 was because of the aging up and the dying, you could do generations of a family. And this kind of The Sims 2 started this whole idea of a legacy family, which I don't know if you have heard of.
It rings a bell, let's say.
It's basically someone who's played The Sims for a while gets to a point where they think, well, this is fun, but what do I do now? How do I make it more interesting? I've gotten good at this. People first play The Sims and they go, God, this is impossible. My Sim is screaming at me because they're hungry and they need to go to the bathroom and they're tired and I don't know what to do. And I've got like a family of, 6 and they're all out of control. But as you get better at the game and you get better at multitasking and stuff, you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, this is good. I need a new challenge. And there are forums and stuff for this, and people come up with all these weird and wacky scenarios that you can create in your game to give you something more difficult to do, like have a family of Sims who only have negative personality traits or something like that. But the one that stood out to me was this idea of a legacy, where you'd start with one Sim and then you would try to play through 10 generations. So you'd start with, one woman maybe, and then she'd have a child, and then you'd play as her child, and then you'd play as their child, etc., etc. I don't think I've ever got to 10 generations, partly because, especially in The Sims 2 and 3, my games would bug out once I'd played for a certain number of hours. They would just start breaking. or like I wouldn't be able to view the family tree or something, which was kind of the whole point. Like I wanted to be able to look back at this family tree, or I'd just get bored, and or I'd stop playing for a few months, which happens quite a lot, and then I'd go back to it and I wouldn't remember what I was doing, and I'd want to start a new one. But yeah, I do this legacy thing. It's not, I guess it's not really a story so much as just this is the way I play now. I'll start with one sim and I'll focus on them, and then I'll focus on their child. With The Sims 4, I kind of try and achieve all of the goals that one sim has. So like they have like a lifetime goal that you can pick. I can't remember what it's called, like an aspiration or something. And then once I'd achieved that, and once I'd like got them to the top of their career or whatever, then I'd move on to the child, kind of kick the parents out into a retirement home or something.
Evil.
Done
Evil.
with you. Elders aren't very much fun. It's too dangerous to woohoo when you're an elder because you might die. The strain. It's true.
Oh, it is, but still, it's weird to hear about it being talked about in Sims comparison anyways. Sims 2 also kind of introduced a brand new side of property building, if I remember correctly. Like obviously you could build houses in the Sims 1, but like it took it to a whole new level, at least on the on both console and PC, but especially on PC, because like you could build multiple story houses now and buildings, right? Correct?
Could you not do that in The Sims 1?
I don't think you could. At least not on console. Maybe I'm just talking about
Yeah.
console.
I'm really struggling to remember. But yeah, like as they've, as I'm going to say to the answer of every question, as they've progressed, they've gotten more and more options as far as that's concerned. You can now have like basements and stuff, which I don't think you could in The Sims 2. I thought you were going down the direction of owning like community lots, which I think came in one of the Sims 2 expansions, Open for Business. I think that was Sims 2.
It might
I'm
have
gonna
been.
check.
It is.
Perfect. Yeah, Open for Business. You could run like a shop, which obviously was separate from your house, which is quite a big deal.
And I've just found out one of the designers on it is someone who we're going to have on, Robin Haneke.
Oh, thanks, Robin. Thanks for working on my favorite game.
So like talk about more about the concept of community lots then, like how they improved the game then, and the series as a whole.
How they improved the series. I think it just you got to a point with The Sims 1 where you got kind of bored of just being in one house. I mean, you could pick from multiple. I think there was a neighborhood with like 10 lots on it. Oh, and I used to make these. Gosh, this is so I was a bit of an obsessive child, and I used to make like my own documents to go with the games that I was playing. I had a handwritten Pokédex that I'd put like columns for whether I'd caught the Pokemon, whether I'd evolved the Pokemon, whether I'd trained it up to level 100. That was my eventual goal that I never succeeded. I was going to take all 150 Pokemon, train them up to level 100, and then I'd tick my little column. But for The Sims, even for The Sims 1, I had a list of the families that I would have in each of the houses, and kind of, I made up little stories in my head, like, this house had a rivalry with this house, even though you couldn't, in The Sims 1, they couldn't interact, I don't think. They might have been able to phone each other up or something. But in The Sims 2, you got to explore a lot more. You got to take your Sims to community lots, while you were playing as them. You didn't have to come out of the game and then go back in again. And yeah, they could own houses and stuff. Well, I think The Sims 2 was the one where each expansion did something really, really different and brought like a lot more to the game. I think that has lessened since then.
Just to touch upon the other expansions besides Open Business for Business, because like there was like looking up like the expansions that did come out, and the ones that stood out for me is perhaps the important stuff. Although it's safe to say that all the expansions were very important. Obviously, would that be a right assumption?
I
Like,
had my preferences.
But they all added something like significant, anyways.
Yeah, although with every entry in the series, you get to a point towards the end of its life where you know that the next one is coming, so you find it more difficult to get excited about the expansions because you're like, well, I'm just going to wait for the next one now. So you look at the last expansions for all of them, and I got less excited about them, I think. The Sims 2, I really, really liked University. This is before I'd actually been to university myself. Possibly if I'd already been a student, I might have been less excited about it, but I thought that was pretty cool. And I think Nightlife introduced vampires, so that was cool as well. Pets, a lot of people liked pets. I've never been a pet person, so that didn't really appeal to me that much. But it did have plant sims in it. I thought they were pretty cool, which is a sim that's like half plant, I think. So they have they don't have the same set of needs as a normal sim, and if they breed with a normal sim, I think maybe they might produce a plant sim baby. I'm not entirely sure on that, or maybe they breed in a different way. I can't remember. It's been a few years. Bon Voyage I was initially excited about, and then it was so slow on my aging laptop that I didn't play much of that. And then I just kind of didn't really get excited about Free Time and Apartment Life, because by that point I knew that the next one was coming.
Perhaps, rather selfishly, I always kind of saw the expansions for The Sims as more cosmetic than adding anything significant. But like in reading up the expansions that did come out for The Sims 2 and PC, anyways, like they did add something significant in one.
Oh yeah, people get confused because there are two kinds. There's expansion packs and then there's stuff packs with a really charming name, which are they're just hat. But I did own all of them for The Sims 2, but not for The Sims 3. But the ones that people think of are the stuff packs, like IKEA stuff and H&M stuff that were just collections of new objects that you could add to your game. Which, for somebody who, like me, just plays the game kind of as it's meant to be played, they're not particularly interesting. I guess they're more interesting for people who are interested in building interesting houses, or in maybe telling certain stories that they need a certain set of objects for. Like, I think there was one that came with like a load of lingerie. It might have been called like Master Suite or Bedroom Stuff or something. Maybe that was for The Sims 3. But yeah, I got definitely less excited about those. But the expansions are more interesting. Definitely.
Like what would you say is perhaps the expansion that stands out for you as your favorite from the Sims 2 era, anyways?
From the Sims 2, probably University. Although I really liked Seasons. That's the one that came with plant sims, not pets. Yeah, I really liked Seasons because it had weather in it, and I like all through The Sims, which I guess is why I didn't mind Sims 3 as much as some people. I've really liked when they've tried to mimic reality. And I was worried about The Sims 4 because of this. You mentioned that you'd seen all the marketing, and it seemed very kind of frivolous, and like they were trying to emphasize the silly, non-realistic side of things, like dying of laughter and stuff like that. Because I really like the realistic aspects of The Sims. So I really liked Seasons because it brought weather. It may have even brought in weather effects, though this might not have been until The Sims 3, like Sims getting cold if they stay out in the snow too long and stuff like that, which I thought was a neat touch.
What else do you like about The Sims 2 that we've not touched upon tonight? Or well, this could more or less count for the series as well, but let's say Sims 2 anyways.
Let me think. I can't really remember. I think it honestly was the aging and the genetics that I was most interested in. I'm just having a look through. I'm cheating. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article because
you're not the only one.
I just find it so difficult to remember what was specific to The Sims 2, as opposed to the rest of the series. Let's see. Influencing, chemistry, reputation. So these are all things that came in the expansions, which makes it even more difficult to tell them apart, right? Because if you have, you can say, well, The Sims 2 came out 4 or 5 years before The Sims 3, so surely you can tell them apart. But you had, an expansion every few months or every year that was changing the game in some way. So it's really difficult to remember. I do think I've never used mods or custom content, but I do think it's super cool that started with The Sims 2, really, and that people have taken it so far. I wrote I wrote a thing for PC Gamer the other day about Sims 4 mods, and people are doing all sorts of cool stuff with it. And people are still making mods for The Sims 2. Like, I went to mod The Sims for research, and there's still a Sims 2 section. So I guess people are still playing it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that started with The Sims 2, I think, or that at least it was made a lot easier with The Sims 2 as EA kind of saw, or Maxis, whoever saw that people were doing this and decided to make it easier for them somehow.
It's fascinating to hear that there does seem to be still after 11 years so much demand for The Sims 2. I know it's like I remember I can't remember if this was the end of last year or the start of this year, but EA basically gave away The Sims 2 and all the expansions, and I was like, happy days. But at the same time,
Yeah.
it was more or less cannibalizing in the sales of The Sims 4 as well. So,
What, you think that people who got a free copy of The Sims 2 might have otherwise been interested in buying The Sims 4 but didn't because they had The Sims 2? I'm not sure how realistic that is.
maybe I don't know. Like,
I mean, honestly, so I'm incredibly lucky because I reviewed The Sims 4, so I got a review copy. If I hadn't, I mean, I think it's £50 or something ridiculous. I probably wouldn't have got it, certainly not on launch. It's really, really expensive. So I don't think that anyone who was going to buy The Sims 4 would have been like, oh, but I got The Sims 2 instead. If someone was going to buy The Sims 4, they wanted The Sims 4 and they wanted it really badly enough to spend £50 on it.
what else did you not like about The Sims 2?
Ooh, the loading screens, the bugs, the fact that it was taking over my life, and I thought that it was a bad enough problem that I'd need to give it up when I became a grown up. Yeah, probably those things.
Ah.
But definitely the bugs and the expense as well. Imagine all of the things I could have got if I hadn't been buying and getting for presents all of these expansion packs. Imagine all of the other games I could have played. I could have so much more experience that is relevant to my career, but instead I played like hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of The Sims throughout, the 15 years or whatever since the first one came out.
Like a lot more of a varied experience, basically, in playing games, if were it not for The Sims.
Sure, but though, I guess I always say to people that everyone has at least one game that's like that. We have this feeling of guilt as people who work in video games that you're supposed to be playing something new all of the time, especially if you're a critic.
Yes.
But I think everyone has this one game or maybe two that they go back to again and again. And it has to be that kind of game that you can keep playing. I know you say that Metal Gear Solid is your favorite game, or at least it was, or The Last of Us is your favorite game now, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But you wouldn't play that every day for a month.
No, you wouldn't, no.
But The Sims, I could totally do that. And Dota, you could totally do that. You could play Spelunky every day. You could play something like Don't Starve. You could play City Skylines. I'm sure people have been playing that obsessively. I think everyone has a game like that they keep going back to. And for me, it's The Sims.
It's more of a maybe again, this is the wrong thing to kind of term it as, or to define it as, but it's more of the constant evolution of it, basically. Like I can't quite think of the right words for it, but it's more of it's the progression of it. It keeps going on and on and on. Like there's no end in sight, basically.
Sure. Yeah, for a minute there I thought you were going to say because they keep releasing updates, but that's not it. Like if I got marooned on a desert island now, and I had to take a game with me, I'd take The Sims 4 in its current state, and I wouldn't have internet, so I wouldn't get any of the updates. But oh gosh, I hope you can play it offline. If you can play it offline, then I'd take that to my desert island with me. Also, somehow my gaming PC. Because you're right, it never ends. There's always something new to do. You can always just tell a new story. And even, as I said, playing it as it's supposed to be played, trying to just get the goals in the game, like trying to go through all the careers, trying to go through all of the lifetime aspirations. I haven't even cracked the surface, and I have played dozens of hours of The Sims 4, if not hundreds, by this point.
Are you willing to put a ballpark on that figure?
I mean, I was going to say I could find out, but I think I've played it on multiple PCs. But I can try and find out on Origin. I'm sure it tells you. Let's see. Oh my gosh. Wow. So I've played 129 hours of The Sims 4.
Ooh, wow.
And before it came out, I played 32 hours of The Sims 4 Create a Sim demo. And I mean, Sims 4 will be the one with the lowest hour count. Probably Sims 2 will have the highest because, I was a teenager and I had my own computer in my bedroom. So I really, really did very little else apart from, the things that teenagers do on the internet in their bedrooms. But apart from that, I was playing The Sims. So I would have played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours overall.
Do you think you'd be willing to put a figure on that? Like, as a rough estimate?
I couldn't. I mean, it would be... I couldn't guess, but it would be an embarrassing amount. I had no friends when I was growing up, so...
okay.
The Sims were my friends. I mean, that's kind of a lie. I had friends when I was a teenager, but I didn't when I was growing up.
So, the series as a whole, then, like, we're more or less talking about the series as a whole, then, with more or less an emphasis on The Sims 2, but, like, how do you see the series moving forward after The Sims 4, anyways?
Oh, gosh. Do you think it will?
There's possibilities. Like, anything is possible, but, like, at the same time, there is everything that's happened with Maxis this year. Although, of course, there is, of course, the team that... There is the Sims studio now that Rachel Franklin is heading up, so, like...
Oh, Rachel's great. Isn't she always she's so peppy when she comes out on stage to talk about The Sims? Because I feel like everyone else at those press conferences kind of goes, oh yeah, I forgot this game existed. But there are millions of people who love The Sims. It's not a game, it's a lifestyle. People who play The Sims, and this is what I say to people when they complain about how expensive it is. I mean, you're right, it's very expensive. But people who play The Sims don't play other games, I don't think. Or a lot of them don't. They just play that one game. It's kind of like people who play Call of Duty, right, or FIFA, and that's the only game they buy all year. And people complain like, oh, there's a new one every year and you're just buying it. It's not even that different. But like for these people, that one game is their game, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's the same with The Sims. There are all these people out there for whom The Sims is like the only game they play. And when Rachel gets out on stage, those are the people she's talking to, And I just think it's awesome how excited she gets every time. Especially because people make fun of The Sims, and the conferences and the ways that they try and sell it. But I think it's charming.
Just to kind of go back to the earlier question, like, where can you see the series go from here?
I was hoping you'd forgotten you'd asked.
No, I'm not forgetful. Never.
See, the thing is, I always hope that it'll be more realistic. But while they always try to do that to some extent, they also add in something that kind of reflects the times. So, they add smartphones and stuff like that to the game, and they add all this sharing stuff. Like with The Sims 4, the way it's designed, the kind of interface with the almost RPG-like goals that I mentioned earlier, they're almost Facebook game-like. There's always something popping up like, oh, your sim might want to do this, or why don't you do this? Like it's very like low attention span, if you see what I mean. Kind of like, it reminds me of like a Facebook game, like here's the next thing you should do, and here's the next thing you should do, and here's the next thing you should do. It's kind of almost more directed than the old games. So I feel like when The Sims 5, or if The Sims 5 comes out, 5 years down the line, they'll have, on the one hand, they'll come up with a system to make it more realistic and more mechanically interesting, like they did with the emotion system with The Sims 4. I don't know what it'll be, but they'll come up with something like that, and they'll also come up with another side of it that'll be reflective of the time that the game is coming out in. Some kind of social media meme type thing that's popular at the time that they'll kind of shoehorn into the game, and it'll seem really old-fashioned when we look back at it in 15 years' time.
At the same time, though, it's worth looking back as well, like at the legacy of Maxis, because obviously, like I've said, like they're no longer about. So, but obviously, there's the Sim Studio as well. So, like, what is the legacy you think that they have left behind? Obviously, there is The Sims, but there's also SimCity as well, and for better or worse, Spore to a certain extent.
Oh, we're going to talk about Spore.
No, not too much, not too much.
I've played a lot of Spore.
Oh,
I'm a sucker for this kind of systems based kind of one interesting idea, and I will just get obsessed with it and play it even to the point beyond possibly where it's fun. And it gets like that with The Sims sometimes. I'll play for hours and hours and then I'll sit back and I'll think, am I having fun? And sometimes I'm not sure if I actually am. And it got like that with Spore. I played it a lot at university actually. My boyfriend at the time would play Gran Turismo 5 or Gran Turismo 4, which again is another game that you can just play. And there are races in Gran Turismo that you have to do for like 24 hours.
yep, endurance races
So-
like Le Mans, basically.
I don't know what that is, but yeah, he would do that. He would sit there with his wheel and he would play Gran Turismo, and I would sit there at my computer and I would play Spore, to the extent that hearing the music from Gran Turismo makes me think of Spore. It's pretty weird. Yeah, so I played lots of Spore, and I just, oh my goodness, it was so dull by the end of it, but I just kept playing. I haven't let myself get like that with a game, I hope, unless I've not realized since then. I don't have time for that now.
Oh, as an adult, like you wouldn't have the time span to spend like what hundreds and hundreds of hours of a game these days.
Well,
he says having nearly spent 70 hours on Metal Gear Solid 5 as of recording this.
oh my goodness, that game hasn't been out very long at all.
No, oh, to be fair, I got it a few days early, and that wasn't from Konami neither. So,
Sure. I mean, obviously, I've spent a lot of time with The Sims 4, but when I was a student, and specifically a student of philosophy, I had a lot of free time, more than I do now. I'm kind of, at this point, I'm working most of the time, and then sometimes it will just be like, I need to do something fun for an hour before I go to bed, and I can't be bothered to start a new game, so I'm just going to play The Sims.
but we digress to kind of get back to what I was saying. Like, what do you think is the legacy Maxis has kind of left behind for itself?
I think that the Maxis and The Sims are essentially synonymous at this point. Like, what does anyone know them for, really, apart from that?
Ooh, that's a good question. Although the case could be said SimCity.
Sure, SimCity. I think SimCity is a lesser brand now. Some other people might disagree with me, but I'm thinking. I mean, because I generally have my eye on a wider audience than the people who call themselves gamers, I guess. And The Sims is incredibly popular with a lot of people who don't consider themselves to be gamers. It's popular with mums and with kids and stuff like that in all its forms, not just on the PC. On the mobile versions, which I hear are quite good now that mobiles are more impressive than they were when I first tried to play Sims on one.
Oh god, I remember seeing footage of The Sims 2. I think it was on the N-Gate, and it didn't look good.
No.
Oh god, just mad.
Kids these days, they don't know what they've got going for them, do they?
They don't know.
They're so lucky.
They don't know how good they have it.
That's right.
This is going to be perhaps the hardest question you'll ever have to answer in your life, but
We
top,
could have a conversation about hard questions I've had to answer, Johnny, but I don't think this is the place.
let's see for that. Top 3 Sims games.
As in the base games.
Base games. Let's go for base games.
So, Sims 2 is... I've arbitrarily decided that
Of
Sims
course.
2 is my favourite
Of
because
course.
it's the last one I had all the expansions for and because I've probably played it the most. But after that... So, I really, really like what they've done with The Sims 4. Oh gosh, this is hard. Because I just have to pick one that doesn't get to be in the list. And I feel like they've improved, so I feel like The Sims 1 shouldn't be in there. But then I'm like, but The Sims 1 is the first one, Surely it deserves a place just for starting it all. let's say The Sims 2, then The Sims 4, then The Sims 1.
Okay.
Because this doesn't mean anything anyway, Johnny, and you know it.
Honorable mentions. Go for it.
Oh, honorable mentions. So I used to tell people that my favorite game was Fallout 3. Um, I think because, so as I mentioned, I basically skipped a console generation. I didn't really play very many games on the PS2, Xbox, or GameCube. So, but then when I was 16, my mother got me a job at the local game, and I started playing games again because I was surrounded by them and having to sell them to people. And being surrounded by a thing, gamers who might be listening, makes you think that it's more important than it is. So I was surrounded by video games and I was selling them to people, and I managed to kind of sell them to myself. So I bought a DS, and then I bought a Wii, and then my colleagues convinced me to get an Xbox 360. And I got Fallout 3. I don't remember why. I think it might have been because my friend was going on about how great Fable 3 was, and I got confused and bought Fallout 3 instead. I tried playing it and was like, I don't even know what I'm doing, and kind of gave up. And then I came back to it, and for some reason just managed to get through it more than I had the last time. I think maybe I put it down to easy or something. And I just couldn't believe what video games were doing now. It's obviously quite a big leap from Spyro the Dragon to Fallout 3. And I was playing some other games between then, but not nearly as many, to keep up the idea of what video games were doing. And it just kind of hit me at the right time, I think, when I was like 16 or 17. And yeah, I just loved it.
I played a lot of Fallout 3 quite recently. I think it was before E3. It was before E3. It was more or less the week of E3 beforehand. I was trying to cram in the story of Fallout 3 before they showed off Fallout 4 at the Bethesda presser. And beforehand, I'd spent something like 11 hours combined on multiple playthroughs. In this playthrough I was doing, it was 11 hours one playthrough. So I was trying to cram in as much as I could. Of the story side. I know it was before E3, but I've played a lot of Bethesda RPGs. Well, not a lot of Bethesda RPGs. It's basically Fallout 3, Skyrim, and Oblivion. But I've played a lot more of Skyrim than I have Fallout 3, and it's let me think. How much have I put into Skyrim? It's not an obscene amount, not Metal Gear levels of obscene, anyways, but something around 18, 20 hours, something like that. Certainly on Xbox 360 anyways. It'll be a bit more, or a bit combined on PC and Xbox 360. It'd be something like 21 hours, but standalone would be like 3 hours on PC because my PC's full boarded in terms of playing games anyways, and 18 hours on Xbox 360. And I think with Bethesda RPGs, like, there's such a time sink because they have such an immersive sense to them, an immersive side to them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They felt like actual worlds, and I really, really loved that. And I was astonished by it because I got the concept of a game world. I'd played Spyro the Dragon 2, where you went to different villages and you could speak to people, but it wasn't anywhere near what it was like in Fallout 3. I'm trying to think in general. I mean, I really, really liked the Mass Effect games. They're another one that I'm actually looking forward to the next one. I mean, I'm trying not to, because I just try not to do that in general. What's the point of looking forward to something that isn't here yet? I always kind of feel, but I really, really enjoyed Mass Effect. The same kind of thing as Fallout. I was like, wow, I didn't realize games could do this. What else? At the moment, I'm playing a lot of Kitty Powers Matchmaker. It's one of my current favorite games. It's which I mean, it looks so cutesy. I think intentionally so. But when you play it, it's actually a really, really interesting and kind of mechanically rich interpretation of dating in video game form. It's fascinating. I'm hopefully gonna be doing a talk about it actually at Video Brains. Maybe if I say this here, then Jake will have to say yes.
I'm definitely going to put that in. So, and Jake's actually going to be coming on later this season. So,
Oh, perfect.
and as of recording this, I'm doing his episode tomorrow. So I'll be sure to bring that up.
You'll have to tell him I said that.
Yes.
I was going to look on Steam to see what I've spent the most time in. So, Fallout 3 and then Skyrim, I've spent a lot of time in as well, for very similar reasons. What else have I liked? I tend to like either kind of games that have interesting stories or let you tell interesting stories, like The Sims and like Mass Effect and Fallout and Skyrim and stuff, or on the almost the other end of the spectrum, games that have like maybe one or two kind of basic ideas behind them and then they riff on that. So I really, really liked Kalimba recently, which is a puzzle platformer where you control two totems at the same time and they can only go through certain colors. So you have to kind of switch them and stuff. And that's the basic idea. You control two totems at the same time, but it kind of riffs on that throughout the game. Never getting too complicated, but just kind of, you have to just perfect your skills and understanding of this basic mechanic in order to solve the puzzle in the level and get to the end. Yeah, it's pretty cool and really, really kind of charming aesthetically, and it has the sounds of a kalimba throughout as you jump and stuff, which is a really nice touch.
Top 3 games ever. What would they be on your list? Obviously, Sims 2 top.
So, The Sims 2, or really all of the Sims, but you made me pick one. I still maintain that it's basically the same game. So The Sims 2 and Fallout 3 and possibly then the Mass Effect series. And if you make me pick one, I will scream because
I'm going to force you to pick one.
I don't remember which one has what bits in it, honestly. I think I played them all in a row. So I honestly couldn't tell you. I can't tell them apart.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm afraid I'm not going to bend to your will in this case. I don't know if you've noticed, Johnny, but I've been casually hawking my shit throughout this episode.
You have.
If people, as always, if people are interested for some reason in finding out more about me, the boring woman who plays lots and lots of Sims, I am on Twitter at Jawsew, which is JAWSEW. For those who don't understand, that's Jaws, like the shark, which is short for Jordan, and then EW, which are my initials. I have a website, which I just updated actually, and my friend did some art for it, so it's pretty nice looking. Maybe you should go look at that. That's jordanweber.com. Feel free to tell me if you like it. All of my work is on there, really. I'm about, I write for The Guardian, PC Gamer, Kotaku, places like that. I have started doing more talking recently, so I'm going to be doing hopefully some more Video Brain stuff, as I said earlier. If not, then maybe talks at some other events and things. But, it'll all be on Twitter, I'm sure. Don't follow me if you don't like cake, because I tweet a lot of baking.
Who doesn't like cake? Seriously, are you mad?
In fact, I often tell people I don't like cake because I don't like most cake. I'm pretty fussy. I don't like sponge or fruit cake or chocolate cake.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's awful.
Like sponge fruitcake I can get, but chocolate?
No, I'm a purist. I like chocolate, just a chocolate bar, but I don't like chocolate cake or brownies or anything like that.
Oh,
I know,
dear.
it's terrible, isn't it? How we all have these individual tastes that sometimes differ. Isn't it just the worst?
It is
Gosh,
the worst.
yeah,
It
everyone
is.
should agree on everything.
Thanks for listening to the kickoff of Season 3 of My Favourite Game. Next week, Dan Pearce on Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil. Until next week, it's good to be back. Bye bye.